Hey,
David, your sound's off.
You're muted. Yeah.
oops. Sorry. Hey, so welcome everybody to Focus 2026. We're so excited to have Ann Masoni here tonight, the executive director from the Houston Center for Photography, and looking forward to hearing from all the artists about their work tonight. We would like to thank the following for their financial support: the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, who just gave APG another grant, which is fantastic, the Georgia Council for the Arts through the appropriations of the Georgia General Assembly. The Georgia Council for the Arts also receives support from its partner agency, the National Endowment for the Arts. We'd like to thank our Keystone members, Beth Lilly, Chip Standiford, and Corinne Adams, our 2025-26 donors, and our corporate sponsors, Aperturant, Art Pop Sips, the Atlanta School of Photography, Digital Arts Studio, and the Lovett School. With Aperturant, which if you're not familiar with them, they rent camera equipment and lenses. With Aperturant, the Atlanta School of Photography and Digital Art Studios, we have discounts available for our members. So if you're planning on doing business with any of those businesses and you don't have the discount code, just reach out to me and I will get that right to you. And especially a big, huge thank you to our APG members. You're the whole reason that we exist. We're an artist run and focused organization. And it's a pleasure to get to serve the members of this organization. Our current exhibitions, Focus 2026, which is running through the 21st, as well as Fashion, which is going to be running also through the 21st. And there'll be a juror artist talk with Rafael Gomes, who's the creative director of SCAD Fashion Museum of Fashion and Film, on the 13th of August. So watch for information on that. Our current call for entry is for this year's Atlanta Art Fair over at Pullman Yards. Last year's booth was really, really successful, and the guest curator for the Atlanta Art Fair named APG's booth the best curated booth at the fair. So we're going to see if we can do that again. We just opened up the calls for entry. Um, Andy McKenzie, PhD, who is the curator of works on paper at the Michael C. Carlos Museum, is going to be the juror for that show. So the dark room. So update on the dark room. We've been things have been kind of at a standstill while we've been going back and forth with the contractor on trying to get quotes and just get the work moving again. And we're finally moving forward again. We're hoping to have the dark room open sometime in you know, late August, maybe. I'm thinking, hopefully, no later than early September. Um, but initially, we're going to be selling 24 memberships to the dark room because we want to make sure that everybody that wants to have time in the dark room will have time in the dark room. Um, when I made this deck, there were 16 available spots. That's now 15 available spots. And once we know the date that the dark room is going to open, if people have already purchased their memberships, we will set their renewal date to be the date that the dark room opens. And the dark room is not only going to be open during business hours, but everybody who is a member of the dark room will be getting a key fob so that they can come into APG after hours and um, use the dark room at their convenience. So
Awesome.
watch for more information about that coming up. We're very, very excited to be able to offer this because Atlanta really lacks a community dark room. Okay, and that brings us tonight, and that brings us to our juror, who's Ann Layton Masani, who's the executive director of the Houston Center for Photography in Texas. Yeah. Before joining HCP, she was the dean and managing director of education at the International Center of Photography in New York City, which is a great organization. Among others, she has held academic positions at Cornell University, Tyler School of Art, and the University of the Arts. She has curated over 30 exhibitions, including most recently solo exhibitions by Mark Oram Leckleth. I'm not sure if I got that right. And
Leclerc.
Deborah Jack. Yeah. She co edited the Focal Press Companion to the Constructed Image in Contemporary Photography with Marnie Schneidelman. Masoni graduated with an MFA in photography from Ohio University and BAs in photography and anthropology from Connecticut College. Her personal studio practice relates to ideas of both real and fabricated memories and identity using a variety of film and digital techniques. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we're going to spotlight Anne. And the
Okay,
floor is yours.
fantastic. Well, thank you for the warm introduction and thank you for inviting me to jury this exhibition. I think before I get into sort of what it is that I do when I'm jurying an exhibition, I'll share the part of the reason I am the executive director and curator at the Houston Center for Photography is because of the very community that we make in our photo centers. We are a small and mighty bunch across the entire United States. And one of the things that is really important is our origin stories. We are born out of the idea that we don't have a place in the museum many, many years ago. We certainly have taken that space over. But in making that proclamation and determining ourselves as a worthwhile medium to pursue from every aspect, whether it was as a hobbyist, as a curious technologist, as a fine art practitioner, or an applied photographer, to any of its related industries, we chose those photo centers as a place to practice together, to be in community together, to share ideas, to share our work. And that's the reason we continue to exist. As David suggested, it is our membership that we are here to do the work for. And to me, that's such a incredible thing about the photo centers across the globe. And it's such an important thing about how our medium is uniquely different than so many others. We practice sometimes in isolation behind our camera, but there's so little that we do after that that really is as a lone process in its sum total. At some point, we reach out to that community, whether it's through shared resources like the dark rooms or the digital spaces. Or the critique groups, or being a part of a member exhibition. So thank you all for being members of APG, and also for those of you who may also be members of HCP. Thank you as well for that. Um, David, thank you for the introduction. I think the notes of my bio are probably all that is important, but I'll share a little bit about my origin story with photography. I pick up a camera at the age of 12, 13, and really seriously at the age of 16. I tell my dad that the point and shoot camera I've had isn't enough, and I'd like to learn on a 35 millimeter. And we live at this point, having moved from Washington, D.C. to the Eastern Shore of Maryland, where there is literally no place for me to study photography. Oops, sorry about that. And so my father obliges me, and I get a little Yashica 35 millimeter camera, and my dad hands me a manual and hands me over all of the black and white photography books that he's collected as an amateur photographer, and says, "Well, now what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to figure this out." And this incredible device called the camera, with all of its beautiful technology and all its simplicity in its manual form, was something that I was so hooked onto from the very first minute that it almost didn't matter what I was making photographs of. It was that I had the capacity to tell stories, and that it would be the thing that would fuel me for years and years to come. On the other hand, though, I am the child of pragmatic parents who said, "But of course, you cannot major in these things and you cannot pursue this as a career." And I obliged them by majoring in the only degree that was close enough alphabetically to art, with anthropology, and decided I would make my way back to art and photography just as soon as I could. Once that undergraduate degree was over, I was quickly in a photo studio working for a portrait photographer in Washington, D.C., and then the story continues from there, and MFA and everything that comes with that, and then 22 years in academia, and now the executive director of HCP. I love this medium. To me, there is nothing better than photography. It goes photo, dogs. Yeah, there's not a third. So, so I, it really, those are the love affairs of my life. I love everything about it, and I love literally everything about it. I love that it is something that we all validate our existence with. We take photos of the important events in our lives, but also the banality of our lives. I love that it is the thing that we mourn through, that we grieve through as we lose loved ones. We hold on and cherish those photographs as keepsakes of those times. I say, "Good morning, Papa," every day to a photo of my father, and every night, wish him well. And we do that because it is the keepsake of our stories. And I love that it is the highest of art. And I love that it is the easiest way to convey information of what happens around the globe. So when I jury a show, I'm thinking about all of the things that photography is and wanting to put together a series of images that might share that entire scope. So for me, it isn't always thinking about what are the images that are going to knock them out with color or knock them out with composition, but also the quieter moments that might be there, the things that are clearly about recording something intimate and special to that particular person and what that might mean to somebody else who's not made that kind of image, but might understand and have empathy for the image that they're seeing and the situation and the facsimile of that situation as it's conveyed through the photographic image. And so for me, I also think about how that's going to manifest in the gallery space and the fact that not all people who come to that exhibition are going to be particularly interested in, a photograph that might be conceptually dense, or they might not be interested in something that shares the complexity and the challenges of life. And so for me, I start with little things. How will I be able to connect the images, even if it's not curated the way that I'm thinking about it? How will it come together? Will somebody be able to walk through the room and recognize that there's a gesture, whether through a line and a mark making that happens through the lens, the similarity of families sharing time, our incredible and complicated world that we live in? Can we find those little pieces to connect to that make it an entrance for somebody coming into the gallery space? And I think about what it means for each of you to celebrate with your families and your loved ones when your image is on that wall, and to then take that next step from this exhibition call for entry to the next one and then to the solo show. And so when I'm going through the work, I'm not always thinking about the work from the standpoint of a successful body of work or a single successful image, but how we pull those images together in community, right? And how we think about those images in the collective, and how those images will be a record of this moment and this group of members, and how special that really is. That's all I gotta say.
Well, that was great. I need to package that up. That was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. It is, though I will say no to jurying only if it comes at a time where I know I'm not going to be able to give my time over to really studying and looking through the images. But otherwise, it's like a yes, 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 yes. I want to see how your membership is different than mine in a call for entry, and how this demonstrates, again, as I said, this particular moment. And also then secretly also be able to mine a membership for things that I might consider further down the line. I was a guest critic in a advanced photo class a while back, and I had gotten the PDF of the work that I was going to be looking at, and the first person's work, I critiqued it, and the second person's work was up on the screen. And I said, "Well, I never do this, and I'm sorry to the rest of you because I won't be doing this for you either. But person whose work I'm reviewing right now, I would like to have you in a body in an exhibition that I'm curating a year and a half from now." And that's always on the back of my mind as a curator, is thinking about, what you all are making in the world and what that says about photography in this moment.
Right. Well, thank you so much. So let's remove your spotlight.
Okay.
And we're going to go back to sharing. And that brings us to the exhibition itself. So here is Focus 2026. And these are the artists who are featured in the show. And just so everybody knows, I don't have a date set yet, but Annette Skillman from Mocha GA, she will be coming over to our gallery one day to make a selection. And as soon as she's made that selection, I'll be able to let everybody in the show and publicly know which work has been selected. If you're not familiar, Mocha GA used to be at Tula, and then they were gifted property and architectural plans, and they just built and finished building their own museum on the property of the goat farm, and is going to be opening soon. And so they are very, very busy trying to get the doors open on that. And so that's why I don't have a firm date right now when you'll know which work has been selected to be taken into the permanent collection, but we'll let you know as soon as I know something. So let's kick things off tonight. We'll begin with Alan Finkelman's two pieces. So Alan, are you here?
I am here.
Fabulous. I thought I saw you. And the floor is yours.
Okay. I have two pieces in this show, this one, Klein Beach, and another one, Wetlands Abstract. So I shoot in a variety of locations. I like shooting on shorelines and wetlands. I also shoot in typical landscape environments. I shoot in cities and other built environments. But my photographs are never about those places. Those places are launching pads for form, line, rhythm, space. I'm interested in the relationship of those elements, and I'm looking for those elements and the relationship among them to be more compelling than the places that birth them, than the places that serve as source material. And that's the way I see them, as source material. I don't, while I come out of a landscape tradition, I don't see myself as a landscape photographer. Some people might call me an abstract photographer, and there are certainly elements of abstraction in my work, but I don't think of myself as an abstract photographer either, because my photography always stays rooted, at least somewhat, in the world. While recognition is not critical, it's nevertheless there. You can recognize what the elements of the photograph are, yet it has some abstract elements. I've been shooting for 50 years. I think I'm getting close to knowing what I want to do with photography. But this is kind of it. I'd like to find these relationships, these abstract relationships, and work in form, space, and energy. And I think that I like to let the images speak for themselves.
Alan, one of the things that I fell in love with your work is that to live by the water is to understand that light, when it hits that surface, completely transforms it photographically. And
Yes.
yet, because our experience of water is about what lies beneath its surface, what is its surface, but also comes in with all of the things that we take in, a body of water is not the tone white. A body of water is not the high key reflective light that we might experience through the camera. And for me, there's such a beauty in the way that that translation ceases to be just about the surface of water and has everything to do with how light plays to water. And I was just completely mesmerized.
Oh, I'm so glad. I was thrilled to be selected for this show. I think it's a beautiful show, and I'm proud to be represented in it. And I agree with you about water, and I love water as a palette. It's a beautiful place for me to work. And when I started working more in architectural environments, the challenge for me there is that while water dissolves things for me, uh, brick and concrete don't dissolve very easily.
Yeah.
So that was a more challenging environment for me, but I have been finding ways to get those built environments to do what I need them to do to give up their identities.
Mm.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, and up next, we have Allie Christmas with her piece Manifesting. Allie, are you here, Allie? I don't see you. So I tell you what, if she pops in, we will circle back to her because I was interested in hearing more about this piece. Next up is Ann Walker, who has two works in the show. And Ann, I do not see her here. So we will circle back around to her if she comes in. This was one of her pieces, which was Untitled 3, and this one Untitled 4. And I know Beata is here tonight. So, Beata, would you like to tell us about your work, Patchwork Memory?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you so much to Anne for selecting my piece. It's always an honor to have my art displayed in the beautiful APG gallery alongside the works from so many other talented artists. So thank you so much. This collage is called Patchwork Memory, and it features my paternal grandmother, Despina, a woman I never knew, but whose life I have come to appreciate through my father's childhood stories. Over the last year, I've been working on a series called The Stories We Inherit, combining historical family photographs with collage. And most of the people pictured in these photographs, dating from the early 1900s through the 1970s, died before I had the chance to know them. So interviewing relatives became a way of piecing together their lives, much like assembling a collage. So I'm using magazine pages, family ephemera, online imagery, and fragments from my own photographs, and I build new visual narratives. And through cutting and layering, I explore how memory is shaped, not only but what is preserved, but also by what is forgotten, shared, or unknowable. So Despina immigrated from Greece in 1915 and married my grandfather 2 years later, despite a 15-year age difference. And although the family owned a restaurant, years of gambling by my grandfather's younger brother left them struggling financially. So to support the family, Despina worked as a seamstress for neighborhood families while raising 3 children and managing the household. So one object I remember from my childhood was a simple quilt she had sewn from fabric scraps. It was folded inside a footlocker, not displayed, just quietly preserved. And that memory led me to place her portrait against a quilt-like pattern, suggesting both the literal object she made and the way she stitched together a life from whatever she had. I also cut her figure from the background, which you probably can't really tell. I cut the figure from the background of the original photo and raised it about 1/4 of an inch above the collage surface. And by physically separating her from the background, I allow her to emerge from an otherwise ordinary snapshot. It also becomes a small act of recognition, lifting forward a woman whose contributions were largely unseen in her lifetime. Despina made sure all 3 of her children went to college, determined that they would have opportunities she never did. In making this collage, I'm not only simply preserving a photograph, I'm giving visibility to a woman whose quiet labor shaped generations of my family. The raised portrait and quilt-like background pattern are my way of honoring both what she created with her hands and what she created also with her life.
Very nice.
That's all I have to say.
Hurrah for all the unsung heroes that, brought us all into existence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you, Beata. It's been nice seeing your collage work because I remember when you first undertook this. So it's been great to see some of the pieces in the gallery now.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is going to be Brian Galgano with his piece 4,604 Days.
Hello. I just wanted to say, Anne, first that I couldn't agree more about the hierarchy of photography and dogs. So much so that I made my photography business pet portraits. So, but anyway, this work is a part of a project I have in which I examine my history of alcoholism and sobriety through handmade pinhole cameras, repurposed from old liquor bottles. And so what I've been photographing is sort of my found community in sobriety and the things that are important to me and keep me sober, which stands in stark contrast to the lack of community I had and the isolation that I formed in active addiction. And so this image is just, I guess, it's obviously a double exposure, but the way I made it was sort of I have one of my cameras that I created actually has 2 pinholes in it. And so just formed that sort of effect, which I really liked for this image, which took me a long time to figure out. But so I'm really excited that it was selected. And I appreciate everything you said about how much effort you put into juroring the show as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. I thought this work was just so compelling. And there was something so interesting because you're not by way of the pinhole and the double exposure, you're not solid, right? But there is something so fixed, for, lack of a better, more, less photographic word, but there was something that seemed so settled and anchored in the images that was in direct contradiction to the double exposure of the pinhole, which I found just really, it made me think. I really appreciated that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian. Next up, we have 2 works by Chris May, who was supposed to be here, but I don't see him in the participant list. So we will circle back around to him if he comes in. This is one of his works called Edge 3. And the other one was called Pistol 4. Next, we have a work by Daniel Furse called Cascade. And Daniel, I don't normally ask this, but I've been asked by a lot of people that have come into the gallery that were interested in wanting to know how you had taken this photograph. People were interested in like what kind of camera you had used and was it shot on film originally. So we had lots of different questions. So if you don't mind also like speaking to that while you're talking about your work.
Oh, yeah, certainly. And can you hear me okay? I have a new microphone.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So yes, I can definitely address that. I was like actually thinking of saying that kind of at the beginning, but even before that, I want to say thank you to Anne because this is the first time my work has ever been on a wall. And I'm very new at this, so this is something I'm never going to forget. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. But yes, so this image is actually this is taken on the Chattahoochee River, and it's looking in the the riverside neighborhood across it to some to a power plant, which you can kind of see very ghostly, kind of in the back on the top. This was I don't know how I got away with this. This is film. This is Pan F Plus, developed in PyroCat, and I shot it handheld. And I don't know how the hell I got away with taking such a slow film handheld, like in a long lens too, but I did. And this was a very, very cold day in February. So the cooling towers of the power plant are belching out this like warm, wet kind of air that condenses immediately and drops down onto the trees. So that's what we're looking at. Maybe just a little more about it. Like to get to this place, you have to bushwhack through some bushes about like half a mile. And in doing this, it's kind of an act of meditation itself, like this process of like getting to this place. And that's kind of like approaches the questions I'm trying to like address with this. Um, in the time that you're like trying to get through these like waist high oceans of like pricker bushes and stuff, it gives you a little time to let the chattering monkey in your head kind of be quiet. Um, and you can finally like come to this place, which is this intersection of like the human world. There's like a power plant here and stuff, but this is not a place you're intended to look at. This is not like a like an intentional view that someone designed for you to come and see. This is just like a place that you can kind of come and find, and you have to kind of physically remove yourself from your day-to-day life in a very like kind of deliberate and like considered way to get to this place. And so that kind of like underscores there's sort of like a Buddhist sensibility about this whole project, which is sort of like finding finding meaning and maybe beauty in the fates of where the human world intersects the natural world in a time long beyond like what the designers ever thought. So like the series also features like a lot of like kind of decaying buildings and burned buildings and things like that. So the question I'm trying to address with this is like, you can find these like emotionally resonant kind of situations and document them. And you can't completely remove the person. Like, and after all, I am there and I'm like making the most formal possible observation, right? I'm taking a photograph with like a negative. So like human beings are here. But the question I'm trying to ask is like does like I'm trying to like look at some alien parts of the world, like some things that were never ever intended, and like kind of confront how strange like the non-human part of the world is, and ask like does it remain beautiful if there's no one to observe it? That's kind of the fundamental question I'm trying to ask with this with this project. So anyway, I didn't time myself. I hope I haven't taken more than 3 minutes, but yeah, that's basically where I'm at. Yeah.
So Daniel, congratulations on having your first image up on a wall. And I want to share with you why I fell in love with this image. I took a class. I have always loved math. I'm not very good at it, but I've always loved it. And my math class in college was mathematical thought, math for artists. And Stanley Wertheimer, our professor, who was just a gem of a human being, was happy to have you not be in class so long as you then presented a 10-minute lecture on what it is that you learned about math while you weren't in his class. And I remember, so I was invited to speak at a anthropology conference, and so I wasn't going to be in class. And I was on the Amtrak train heading from Connecticut down to Washington, D.C. for this conference. And I was writing in my notebook about this 10-minute lecture that I was going to be giving about the temperature differences between the outside of the train and the inside of the train and the condensation that was building because it was so cold outside and so hot on that train that there was this freeze thaw moment, and I could run my fingernail over it and chip away at the little bits of frost that were on the inside of the window to see better outside. And just thinking about the math of what those temperature differences are and that atmospheric change that then takes place. And as somebody who grew up partially on the eastern shore of Maryland and had fog days routinely being excused from school because the fog was so thick on the fields that we couldn't get to school. This was that magical space between the temperature spaces of fog and atmosphere and land and temperature. And I was just completely taken.
Wow. Yeah, I that's very interesting that you say that. My background is in physics, so
Ah,
this is
cool.
so like that's really quite an amazing coincidence. But yeah, yeah, definitely this is there's a lot of thermodynamics we could talk about in this picture too, with like dew points and vapor pressure and all that stuff.
Awesome.
Very good. No,
Hey,
thank you again.
thank you, Daniel. All right. So next up is Deborah Barnhart with her piece "End of the Day," and
Yes, thank
I
you.
am. Oh, there you are. Okay,
I'm
great.
here. I am here. And thank you very much for selecting this. This particular piece is from a body of work that I have been working on for the past 7 or 8 months. It's called Building a Home, and it is photographs of construction workers, largely, who are, for the most part, Latino. And so it is a political statement. And in this particular piece, we see this, gosh, he looks like a boy. I think he's probably older, a teenager. But it's amazing to watch these people, largely men, um, on top of buildings, like not afraid of height at all. I'm such a baby when it comes to that. I've seen some walking like they're on balance beams. It's awesome, you know. In this particular case, I also have a picture of a photo of this young man climbing down from the roof because it is the end of the day. And he just is kind of looking there, kind of almost like a rag doll. He's pretty exhausted or thinking or dreaming or perhaps dreaming about a future. Um, so yeah, I mean, I have altogether probably about 25 to 30 photos in this group. And I've actually put together a small zine of some of the work. And I think that perhaps I'm coming to the end of this project and maybe wondering where I'm going to go next. I do embrace using photography for political purposes. So most likely, I may move on to another marginalized group. But in essence, these photos are a tribute to the contribution that these people make to our country. And they're doing work that a lot of other people would not want to do. And I understand that many people have different opinions on that, and I respect that. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Deborah. We need to have a get together one day with everybody in the group that like makes zines so that people can share share
Yeah.
what they've been working on.
I hope the title of the zine will be Ever Correct, because it was the thing in that photograph that just was such a validation of that young man's life, that he's sitting there with Ever and Correct surrounding him. And that just that made me happy.
Oh, great. Thank you.
All right, next up is Jean Dominic. And Jean, would you tell us about, see, you have the one piece in the show. Okay, so tell us about this work, Field Repairs.
Yes, good evening, and thank thank you, Anne, for all your hard work on this exhibition and putting it together. So I appreciate that. This is an image from a photo documentary I did called "Still Here: African American Farmers in the 21st Century," and from 2018 to 2022. I traveled around the country, mostly the eastern seaboard from Massachusetts down to North Carolina. And I was living in California at the time, so there's some California farm representation in the project. But um, I photographed Black farmers doing what they do in a variety of types of farms and sizes of farms and ages of people and all of that kind of stuff. I was trying to have a lot of different types of farmers, because people have sort of a singular image when if they think about farmers at all, they have this singular view of what farmers look like, and so I wanted to um, dispel a bit of that kind of stereotyping. But in any event, this particular farm is in Erath, Louisiana, South Louisiana, sugarcane farm. This gentleman on the left, Dr. Charles Guidry, owns, give or take, 4,000 acres of farmland, and he's been doing sugarcane for over 30 years. And when I've been looking at my project, I typically look at a number of images at one time, and I never really paid much attention to this one as a singular image, but as I had to work with it to present it, print it and frame it and all that, the single word I kept coming back to is heroic. And to me, this image really talks about the kinds of things that farmers do and the kinds of things they have to do. Whenever I tell people about the project, I always mention that there's no repairman to call when you're a farmer. You either figure out how to do it yourself, or somebody, one of the workers or the group of workers, you sort the problem out yourself. And this wagon broke down in the middle of a farm day, and Dr. Guidry and his chief mechanic up there at the top and one of the farm hands made this repair on the spot, and got this piece of equipment back into service, because they pretty much go 18, 20 hours a day, and they can't let one broken down piece of equipment stop the show. So but I really love this image from a compositional standpoint. It sort of presents as heroic to me. Um, yeah, I think that's really all I want to say about this image.
It does have a heroic sense about it, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Jean. And the composition is beautiful. I don't know if I'm supposed to be talking here, but I like triangles, seeing that in the but there's a lot of dignity that these people have. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jean, this was, there, we celebrate a lot in this country, and I don't know that we really celebrate what makes this country run very often, and what feeds us and houses us, and makes it possible for those of us who don't grow our food and raise our cattle to to acknowledge their contribution, and especially to the contribution that so many of our farmers of color have really done in both the history of this nation and our contemporary moment. And it is absolutely heroic, and it was very clear for me anyway, that there was this great love for this community of people as you were making their images. There's such an extraordinary respect for the labor and the energy and the intellect that it takes to do this work.
Thank you.
You're
So,
welcome.
Jean, is this image from the same series that you have on display down at the Central Library right now? Is it,
Yeah, I think this one is in there. Yeah.
so it's part of that whole body of work that you've been
Yeah,
working
yeah.
on.
The
Yeah.
the three farms at the library, just so everybody is aware, for this summer from May until after Labor Day, I have a studio space or a residency at the Fulton County Library downtown, and I'm featuring images from three farms, including Dr. Guidry's farm and one farm from upstate New York and a cranberry farm from Massachusetts, and that's what David's referring to. And this image is a part of that work as well.
Yeah, if you live in Atlanta, you should make your way down to the Central Library in downtown and check out Gene's studio and the exhibition that he's put together there. Not only is like great photographs, but it's also like a great lesson in seeing how to put together an exhibition in a tiny space and have it have a lot of impact. So,
Thanks, David.
okay. Next, we have Swang Chung, who has two works in the show, Edge 1 and Edge 3, I think. Is he? I do not see him here. So we will circle back if he comes in. This is Edge 1, and this one was Edge 6. And then up next, we have Ian McFarlane, who I believe I saw come in. Yes, he's here. So Ian has two works in the show, Bird Standing and Fishing Hole. And Ian, you want to tell us about your works? Ian, are you muted?
Right now?
There you are.
Okay. David, I thought you took me off mute. I wasn't sure if I was.
Yep.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for selecting these two. And I was really excited that you selected these two because these are two very important shots right now in a sense of my process. This first one, we're looking at Bird Standing. It's a little bit more typical of my process where I actually know this young woman and we set up a time to go photograph together. I know her mother really well. Her mother's an artist. Her name's actually Bird. I found this piece of land organically through meeting some people out in about an hour away from where I live in Athens, Georgia. And this wonderful woman showed me this land that she was living on. And it just had this really unbelievable feeling of history and ghosts and energy. So when I spoke with Bird, I said, I think I have the great spot to photograph you. And she said, okay, great. So we went out there, we photographed. I usually spend about an hour to hour and a half with a subject. And it was just a really wonderful day. It rained about 20 minutes before we started. Everything had that lush, shiny energy to it, a little bit of mist in the air. It was just a really, really nice day. When I say process right now, the last year I've been photographing, this is very more typical of my work. Then Fishing Hole. This is something I've been trying to do more in the last year, is that integrate that process of finding someone that I want to photograph and create what I call a false narrative. And that's how I explain it to my subject. I said, I want you to be you, and I want you to be a portrait view, but I also want to take it to another place where the viewer doesn't really understand exactly what's going on here. Is this a stranger? Is this a person he knows? Is this a relative? I like to keep those windows open for the narrative to kind of be found by the viewer. So this, on the other hand, these are complete strangers. And I've been pushing myself, I've said this before, I think in one of the groups, to engage and not confront, it's not the right word, engage, approach complete strangers in rural Georgia and talk to them, see if they're up for a portrait. This man and his son were fishing by this lake that I go to, I paddleboard on. And it took me a little bit, but I finally got engaged and talked to him, and he was a really nice man. And we talked for like half an hour while his son played. And at the last minute before he had to leave, I was like, could I do a portrait of you guys? And he was completely down with it. He had done photography early in his life and had a love for photography. I carry little 5x7 cards with some images on it so I can hand it to the people. They can see my work. I don't like to show people my work on my phone too much. So we captured this photograph, and it really kind of screamed to me that I have these two different processes: people who I set up and I shoot with, and then people who I engage with, complete strangers in all kinds of different environments, which can get pretty scary at times. And I have to push myself into these uncomfortable positions and read the situation very quickly if this is going to go good or if this is going to go bad. And then try to meld them together where they actually look like my work and some sort of process of a theme. And this theme right now I'm working on the last year is called Of the South. And it's taking on a whole new life of its own right now. I have a good handful of pictures, which I'm hoping to maybe even put into a book in the next year. But that's sort of the story behind those two images.
I don't know if you know Jerry Siegel, Ian.
Yes.
He was in the gallery the other day looking at your images, and he was talking about the print for this, and he was talking about how he was just amazed how like an archival pigment print. He said it was the closest thing he'd ever seen to what a silver gelatin print. He was really, really impressed with the print.
That's awesome.
For this
I'm
image.
getting my new work like this in the last 4 or 5 years. I shot with Mamiya 6 square medium format film for 15, 16 years, hand processed everything, hand printed everything. I was a printer for a very long time. This is a Fujifilm GFX 50S medium format digital. And through all my techniques of Photoshop I go back to old school. In my Photoshop, I'm only dodging and burning. Very, very, I'm just playing with the light, just like I used to in the darkroom with my hands and pieces of cards and holes and, and I feel like I'm actually getting it really close to that. And so that's a huge compliment that someone's like, that looks like an old gelatin silver. Yeah. That's all I did for 16 years.
I photograph with a Mamiya C330 and I'm a sucker for a square format image. And when I was going back and forth with which ones to select, because I knew I was going to be selecting 2 of yours. And there was this moment where I was like, all right, I need a coin toss moment. And I was like, all right, I'm just going for the ones with boots. And
okay.
There was this moment of like, why pick which ones? And I was like, she's got boots, the kid's got boots. Let's just go with boots.
That's a good thing.
But really what it is this what is so simple in a square format image is because you have less negative space to work with when you center your figure. There is that proximity of your corners and what that's going to do and how to sort of pull something that is meant to ultimately be a simple exchange of gaze and still have the image create movement and form and all and that's just very clearly present in your work.
Oh, Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm enjoying this new. I've got some new ones coming out soon that are complete strangers, and I'm getting much better at it. I'm not as terrified as I used to be. And I'm also
Thanks,
shooting.
Ian.
I'm shooting some portraits of setup shots where I create this sort of, again, this image of, in my head, this person in this space, and again, hopefully they all come together and it works.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up is Jason Arl Klein with his piece Brothers. And Jason, you're here, so tell us about this work.
Sure, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. I wrote a little something about the picture and then the series, so I'll go quickly because I know we don't have a lot of time. Um, so the series is called Broken by the Names of Flowers, and the picture obviously is called Brothers. So Brothers is a photograph that encapsulates the disillusionment I felt with Zionism, a pervasive ideology in my Jewish upbringing. The image shows a small print of my brother and me as children, flipped around, allowing window light to display our figures as shadows. There are pen marks that act as cynical redactions. A major part of of my identity and the positive memories associated with childhood are now distorted by their ties to a violent government. Across cultures, flowers have long been assigned meanings, creating a vocabulary through which beauty, love, grief, and remembrance are expressed. Likewise, the Zionist narratives I inherited came with a language that taught me how to understand the world before I was old enough to question it. Flowers are categorized and named. Naming becomes ideological when words like homeland and safety carry histories that overtake their apparent innocence. The flower motif is therefore not about botany, but about language itself, how meanings accumulate over time, how symbols once associated with beauty can become burdened by history, and how inherited words can become sites of moral conflict. I don't blame individuals for myths or beliefs that were imparted to me. Family or those within cultural spaces were never malicious. My disdain comes from the political, economic, military, and religious institutions that are heavily complicit in the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, including children like my brother and me once were. This image carries pain, but also the potential to heal trauma. Only through radical acceptance of the harm we cause others and the yearning to change do we stop the suffering and end the cyclical nature of violence. Did you guys all hear that? I don't know. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one wounded me. Pure and simple. There was something so challenged about the image in reverse and these subtle marks that both feel like physical wounds, but also like disregard at times. And I felt wounded by it, and I wanted nothing more than to make sure that it had a space in the exhibition.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, sure.
And next up is Jonathan Hillier's piece called Sisters. And Jonathan's with us tonight. So, Jonathan, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Um, I was doing a project in the mountains of North Carolina. I was asked to do something that related to a poem called Raised by Women in the African American community in this small town in the mountains of Western North Carolina, where the Black community is very isolated. And so I was taking pictures of really just a family picture as a favor to one of the people that's been helping me. And I wandered around and saw these two girls there and told them not to move and got my camera and set it up. And um, I'm I've done quite a few portraits up there in the mountains, and I guess what I'm trying to do is capture their spirit and preserve something about these people who are in a way might be anonymous in the bigger world, but to give them an important place in this community just based on the imagery. Um, and I guess one of the things I love about this is that the girls are sister, even though one appears to be white and one appears to be black. They look so different, and their eyes are incredibly compelling to me. So um, that's the story behind this photograph.
I was just so taken with their separate gazes and the idea of who was behind or off to the side, that the girl in the front is, compelled to stare and look at, and the absolute confidence of the girl in the back to stare directly into your camera, into your lens, and therefore back at us. And that, just that beauty and that confidence and that and then that in the child in the front, the almost bit lip and the offside gaze, there was just such a, such a shift in the way that they were approaching that moment of being photographed.
Thank you, and thanks for selecting this image as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jonathan. Next up, we have Marcos Oscar Lopez with Us and Them. So, Oscar, I go ahead with Marcos. Tell us about this piece.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Um, Hi, Marcus Oscar Lopez. Quick question, is it Annie or Anne?
I'm Anne. Thanks for asking.
Okay, the E is silent. So
Added in.
thank you for choosing my work. It's an honor to be here among all my peers. Big shout out to APG. They're my photo family here in Atlanta, and they get to hear me on my good days and on my bad days. So I appreciate that. What can I say about this image? It is, I guess what I want to let the people know is that the storytelling on this is what has gotten traction out of the series. I think I was at a Beth Lilly critique, and I told everybody it was Us and Them. It's the dark side of the moon, and it started to roll. People were actually uh, took the hook, so I left it at that. I've shown this work to maybe 6 different groups of people, and nobody knows what it is, and I'd rather leave it at that because it destroys um, the magic of what I've created here. I'm a people photographer by trade. So this is really going sideways for me. I don't really do much abstract work, and like Ian said, I know enough about Photoshop to get me in trouble. Dodging, burning, framing, but that's about it. You know, levels and curves. I don't do much Photoshop. This has been manipulated through Photoshop, so I'll leave it at that. And there's 6 of these out there. They were all titled after the series Us and Them, Dark Side of the Moon. It's a Pink Floyd album released, I guess, in the 70s. For all you old hippies out there, you probably know who Pink Floyd is. And the only thing I can say is that I wanted to recreate the mountain ranges, and that's what motivated me to get in Photoshop involved because what I started out with was nothing more than snow on the side of the road, and I saw something there, and I ran with it, but it wasn't what I wanted, so I ended up having to manipulate it. And once I started putting it through the Photoshop machine, I was able to get mountains, and there's a lot of perspective warp going on here. What else can I say about it? Um, I've shown this to quite a few people, and it's fun. It's a way to pass the time, but I don't really. This isn't my forte.
Marcos is somebody who has written about constructed photography and intentionally selected 1990 as the first year that Adobe Photoshop existed as the reason why we would not include any artists before 1990. Um, uh, I was taken with this because I was like, am I looking at bubbles or am I looking at snow? And I'm definitely looking at mountains, but they certainly aren't mountains that exist in the world. But they might be little mountains that exist in the world that might be bigger mountains. And that could have been made out of bubbles in a bubble bath or out of snow. And it was the fact that I didn't know what I was looking at and that I was thinking about bubbles and snow that just made me spend more time with it than maybe the origin of it itself had life on this earth, and that just was enough of a reason for me to keep wandering through the conundrum of this piece.
Yeah, I think half of it is the what is it effect.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
just
go
started.
with that.
I've never been one to let the truth get in the way of a good story. So I
Exactly.
yeah, I'll let people, make their own judgments on it, but it is snow that's been plowed on the side of the road.
Thank you, Marcos.
Well, thank you.
Next up, we have Maureen Healy with her piece Prismatic. And so, Maureen, would you like to
Yes,
tell us about this piece?
sure. First, thank you so much for selecting this photo. I have not been doing photography for a long period of time, really started in 2020. And most of my work is about nature. And so this was taken at the Grand Prismatic Spring in Yellowstone. And I was there for a nature photo workshop, but I could not take my eyes off of the silhouettes of these people on the boardwalk as you walk through. I don't know if you've ever been there to this walk through the spring, and this was at dusk, and so hence how dark it is. But I think what I find myself drawn to the more I do this is this idea of watching people watching things, the sort of meta voyeurism kind of thing that I find really interesting and always now looking for ways to capture that. This to me does have a layer of they're watching, they're also capturing the moment on their phones, so it's got sort of that to me is what made it so interesting. There is a little bit of eeriness to it. I don't know if it's the tint or the colors, but that was really kind of where what I was thinking when I shot this. And so was really, frankly, just thrilled to be part of this show with this type of photography because it's new to me. So thank you.
I was as up and down in space with this one as I was with Marcos, for example. This absolute, like, where am I? What am I looking at? Am I
Yeah.
looking at something that's actually happening in real time in real space? Am I looking at a fabrication? Everything about this image was one of more questions would
Mm.
come the longer I looked at it. And
Yes.
and quite honestly, the way that the air was pushing at her skirt like did me in.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's just the steam, from the
Yeah.
spring,
Just
with the tiny bit of light that was still out there. It was like,
yeah. Fabulous. Absolutely
but
fabulous.
oh, thank you so much.
Thanks, Maureen.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Mandy Garrard with Stages of Womanhood. I believe that was the full title, yes. So, Mandy, you want to tell us about your work?
Yes. Hi. Thanks, Anne, for choosing this photo. I've kind of made it a point this year to get more involved in APG and get some things off of my hard drive, and it's been really cool to get into some of these shows. So I appreciate you telling us about the hard work you put into it and putting in that time. So this photo is just from a family trip, kind of impromptu to Belize, as you can see in the drink in the foreground subject. That's my cousin. And I was just sitting next to her. I have a like deep love for street photography and candid moments, and I just felt like, man, this is really cool, the framing, and I just feel like there's a lot of places for your eyes to go. And I thought of it too as like I think I had changed the title a little bit to Stages of Womanhood, or I think a couple stages of womanhood, because just at my age and my friends and talking about what society expects from you to have a kid versus not having kids and like you become the cat lady or something. I don't know. I just feel like there's more options to being a woman than just mom or not mom and like whatever values people place on that. And so I just liked how my cousin had her drink in her hand and it gives kind of place and context. And then this woman we were hanging out with on the beach and I like really loved her tattoos and just how I think that speaks to wherever, I don't know where in her life she got them, but obviously there's stories with tattoos and then now she's got her kid and I think like her life is probably on a different trajectory. So I don't know, I thought all of that was cool and just noticing in the quiet moment of everybody just hanging out at the beach. So that's it.
Mandy, yours was one of the first images that I knew had to be in the show. Um, because it is such a incredible framing of an image. And the gestures of all three figures' hands were so intentional. You know, there's the holding of this can, but there's a lightness to that embrace of that can, right? It's not the crushing of the can. It's not something that is pressured. And the same was true of the woman standing. There's a lightness to her fingers, and yet at the same time, a readiness to grab that child if needed, right? There's the moment of, you know, observing that you almost see through the fingertips. And then the same was true of the child. And that to me, you know, there was this incredible framing, but there was so much content in the gesture of each of those figures that was so strikingly beautiful. And then on top of that, the four figure, your cousin, that furrow in that brow was just everything.
Thank you. I didn't even think about the hands, but yeah, that's a great point.
Oh, thank you. It's a great image.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have two works by Michael Reese, Automobile is Pencil, Parking Lot is Paper, number 6 and number 10. Yeah, these are great. And it's unfortunate Michael is not with us this evening. But if you're
Okay,
not
then
from,
I'm going to share a story about Michael's work and why this is in this exhibition.
okay.
Because this was so, like, I laughed out loud when I saw these because they are gorgeous compositions. But this idea of the donut, the idea of spinning through the parking lot, as somebody who moved to rural Maryland as a teenager, and this was the thing you did in the plaza at night on a Friday was, you know, like anything in your vehicle just to escape the fact that you lived in this town with nothing to do. And I got caught for speeding when I was 23 years old and was in court because it was a 35 miles over the speed limit and therefore automatic suspension of my license and required court date. And I went in and Judge Park said, Ann Masoni, each of your brothers has gotten off for something stupid they did. I'll let you off for something stupid you did, but you're going to Drive to Survive school and you're going to lie and say that you're 18 years old because it's only for 16 to 18-year-olds and you're 23 and you're too old for this nonsense, but you're going to go and get schooled again. And the officer at that Drive to Survive school said, I guarantee you, as each of you tells the story of why you are here, every single one of the women here did something far more egregious, and every one of the men is here because they were doing donuts in the parking lot with their music too loud. And I just lost it when I saw these because I was like, yeah, there you go. There's my last 2 years of, living on the Eastern Shore before. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it was great. They're so good.
Yeah.
They're so good.
I love in this second one the hubcap that's
Yeah.
like there in the middle of it
Yeah.
all. It's like this great little. Michael's a fabulous artist, and it was so nice to have these two pieces that show he's a multimedia artist and has lots of works in public facing spaces throughout Atlanta. So I was really thrilled to see his work selected for this show.
Oh, very cool.
All right, Money. Money, you're up next with your two. Let's see. Do you have two pieces? No, you have one piece in this show, two in fashion. So, Money, tell us about this work.
Hi, Anne. Thank you so much for choosing my piece. I wasn't sure if any of them were going to get chosen, but I was like, oh, this is a pleasant surprise. Yay. So, this one was basically, I have a thing for like fashion. That's part of my background, fashion, art, color. Um, I love fabric. I love movement. And so with this particular one, it was my first studio shoot like ever. And we were in a completely different studio. And I was like, hey, let's just walk around because there were like other studios and there was one room that was open that was just like wall to wall mirrors. There was track lighting. And, I'm like, oh, we're like backstage or we're on a stage. Let's act like we're on a stage and just take the fabric and just move it around because she's like half naked underneath. And I'm just like, I'm going to try not to get your boobs in the shot. But so we're like moving around and I'm just trying to capture her without capturing me in the background because it's a mirror. And so there's like a couple of images that are just showing her just posing. Well, not really posing, but me capturing her in the motion of her just moving around. Because I do love a lot of movement. But so it was literally like I'm a flight attendant by day. So I worked a flight. It was like the start of a 3-day trip. I worked a flight and I was like, okay, I got 17 hours. What can I do with this? So literally I'm in Islip, hop on the train, the Long Island Railroad, go back into the city. I set this up with her like maybe the night before and I'm just like, hey, let's get this done. So I shot her and then I shot my brother-in-law and his son. But that was like, this was so crazy. I had just finished my MFA. I wanted to still be creative because being a flight attendant, you're not creative. You're pretty much just like, hey, trash, drink. What do you want? Water, paper, plastic. Anyhow, but yes, I still wanted to be creative. The owner of the studio, they were closing it down because it was sold. You know how developers do in New York. So she was like, hey, use the space. And I'm like, okay. And that was the start of a series of me doing studio shoots for a year, which culminated in my like own show in Iowa. Ooh, Indiana. Sorry. I'm like, which state? I'm like, I'm tired. I just came back from a trip. So I'm literally in my uniform and I'm talking to you at work. So I'm like, oh, I'm sleepy. But anyhow, yeah, this is me rambling. I'm gonna stop now.
So, it's so interesting because I think as a juror, sometimes the inclination is to try and find a theme within the theme, within, all of the work that's being shared. And for me, I'm trying to make sure that somebody coming into the space who might only resonate with a abstracted, black and white, minimalist image will also be able to look at an applied fashion image and find the same common ground. And when for me, it was like, okay, you're going to be in this exhibition. Now let's pick the one that's going to allow for tie-ins back into everybody else's work And so I was thinking about the way that, for example, Alan's images of the water space had this common thread with yours in the way that the fabric with those beautiful multicolored tassels were creating line and shape, the way that Chris May's pistol piece also did the same thing, and thinking about even the scratch marks on Jason's and how that would have a relationship back to the physicality of that fabric on that beautiful, beautiful figure. And then even thinking about how yours and Mandy's had a similar sort of swoop of space, and both from the positive to the negative. And so picking yours was picking one that would really pull other pieces together and allow for somebody who had an experience with fashion photography or an experience with portraiture, an experience with abstraction, to find common spaces for that. Because I think so often we can get really myopic about what kind of photography we deem acceptable for the gallery space or that we deem acceptable to our taste. And I'm always looking for making sure that we recognize the extraordinariness of the entirety of our medium, because it's still a camera and light and a lens and a human who's engaging with a scene and a space that they want to see rendered, through our medium. So yeah, thank you for this. It was hard to pick, and yet then very simple once I was like, ah, ha, 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 here are the connecting points.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even connect all of those points. Oh my goodness, that you just blew my mind. So now I got to go back and look at all of the people that you mentioned. So I'm like, let me see. Okay, yeah. But thank you so much. I
You
appreciate
are
all the
so
feedback.
welcome. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Money. Next up is Royce Sobel with his piece, Carrie on Her Couch.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for including this photograph in this exhibition. It's really nice to be amongst such talented people. This particular image is part of a series that was curated by Susan Todd Rocky called We Live Among You. And the group exhibitions idea was around people who struggle with mental health issues live amongst us, even though we physically may not be aware of these struggles. Mentally, people are living with mental health issues throughout our families, our coworkers, our neighbors, our friends. So the only thing that was asked of us as photographers for the show was that we wanted the subject to remain anonymous. So it was an interesting challenge to create a portrait without a face. So to create a story by telling a story through an action. So I put out a call to people that I wanted to photograph people who may struggle with something in particular in mental health, and to reach out privately. And I, once they did, I wanted to photograph them in their home. And so I came to their space, not knowing exactly what we were going to shoot until the real time revealed itself. And so to create a comfortable scenario of vulnerability, I opened up myself and my own personal struggles with my history of mental awareness and struggles that I've had over my life, so that that person could feel comfortable to share with me. And so Carrie in particular talked about how depression just sucks the life out of her on certain days. And we can sometimes relate that sometimes we just can't get out of bed or can't get off the couch. And so there's several images through the series of her actually in her bedroom in bed. And that image, you can't see her face because her tousled hair is covering the anonymous face, and of her hunched over the bed, just exhausted with hands in her head in her hands. This obviously her back is towards the camera, but I'm always drawn to this image. I love the composition of the space, the color of the couch, and this beautiful mustard yellow, and her hair and the blankets and then the art on the walls and the gold in the lamp. And it just wasn't, everything came together beautifully in a very unexpected way, which made, I think, a very successful image that I wanted to have included in my own personal series. So I just find that this is an important conversation to have, and it was a very and very successful show as a whole. A lot of people spoke about their own mental health, and I think it's just a stigma that is still something that we just need to be able to tell more stories about it. And if I'm able to use my lens to highlight other people's stories, then I'm happy to do so. So thank you again for the opportunity to share this image for the show.
Absolutely, Royce. I was this one took me a couple of takes to come back to and really like digest what I was looking at. Because on the one hand, there is this near vernacular composition, right? Not everything is perfectly lined up from an architectural space. The one of the images on the wall is slightly skewed. We don't see all of the door jamb on the far right. The sofa isn't sort of perfectly parallel to the lens. And then there's its intent, right? Its intent is not to be perfectly framed and not to be perfectly aligned and not to just be in perfect rhythm with the architectural space, but to be just that little bit of a jar in the same way that the blanket covers the body, but also doesn't cover it enough so that there's cold air at the same time that there's comfort, right? And that there's light without light being on you in the way that that lamp is pointed up rather than down. And so all of those things, it's such complexity, right? And yet it's also just enough that you can pass by the image if you don't spend the time to pull each of those pieces together and you dismiss it for, something perhaps that's only surface and isn't undersurface. And this one for me was so undersurface, right? Like the undersurface is where we're trying to go. And you play that out so beautifully in the way that you composed it. It's a rather special image. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for those words, Anne. I really appreciate it for that feedback. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Royce. This work is by Sandy Fry called Over Wabash Station. I don't believe I saw Sandy in the room. So we will move on. This is Seth Cook's piece, Chromoscape number 12, Factory. And I didn't see Seth either. And if you haven't been to the gallery to see the show yet, you really should. I forgot the name of exactly the process that he uses to make these, but the photograph of his image does not do justice to what the actual piece looks like. I mean, this is beautiful, but the finished piece, the process that he uses to create these images in the darkroom they're just gorgeous. This really high metallic finish, and so be sure to see this in person. Okay, Tony King, you are up to tell us about this work called Pilata. If I got that right, Pelota?
Pilota is just Italian
Pilata.
for pilot. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much for including this image. It's actually one of my favorites that I've ever taken. I really look for kind of the layers in the world when I'm trying to frame my subjects, and I think there's obviously clearly a lot of layers in this image. But this was taken in Venice, Italy last year, and Venice is actually where I'm from originally through my mom. And I've grown up going there a lot. And one of the places that I was really focused on photographing was the vaporettos, like the water buses. I think it's a great mixture of kind of the touristic aspect of the city where everybody's trying to get on, but also it's a vital part of the locals. You know, you also need to write about Bonito to get where you're going to sometimes and not just walk or have your own boat. So I focused a lot on images from there, and this is one of my favorites because I was able to get a moment when it was almost empty, and therefore I was able to kind of accentuate some of the colors, but also kind of just the um, kind of the textures of the place. And so I saw the mirror and I was looking through, and the pilot was there, and she was kind of looking off at first, and I was trying to get her face in the mirror, but it was too small for what I was hoping to get. So I just kind of waited and waited and waited, and she finally leaned back and looked back at me with kind of this look like, okay, what is this guy doing? Um, but I just think her posture and kind of the look she's giving me, like I can tell she is a Venetian woman. It's a kind of a strong pose, to me that, this is her life. Maybe it was the start of her shift or the end of it, but it's kind of to me, it just expresses a Venetian woman, kind of women I grew up around, and just kind of the attitude and the posture, I think, was strong. And I think overall, everything turned out how I was hoping. It was one photo that I had a lot of time to kind of really fine tune as I was taking it. So, just really pleased with how it turned out and super glad it was included. So, thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, that posture is everything, right? And that perhaps she finally gave in to you being there in order to, to take that posture and give in to that space. And that it stands in such beautiful opposition to the illustrated figures that are then, on either, or on the one side of her. This was just a really stunning composition.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great photo. It's been really nice. This one sits close to the desk that we sit at all day, and I just really have loved spending time looking at this. And the more I spend, just looking at this photograph, the more I've really come to just to really love this one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, we have Wendy Garfinkel Gold, who has two works in the show. One is called Ice Machine, and the other one is Sacral Chakra. And so, Wendy, uh, you are hit.
Well, thank you so much for choosing these images, and I'm really honored to be in this show. Just a lot of really good work in the show. Okay, my story on these things. So back in February, it was really foggy. We were coming home from dinner, and I didn't have my big camera, my good camera. So I had my iPhone, and I said, "Gotta stop, please." I begged my husband, I gotta take pictures of over here because this whole field, if you could see kind of to the left, was just fog is just like, beautiful. Anyway, this ice machine was there, and I just took it in a bunch of configurations and happened to choose this particular one. There was actually a truck and a cart behind the truck next to it on the right, but I did not you know, include that in this. But anyway, I took it and I had a bunch of them. I posted on Facebook. People just went wild, I was like, okay. But anyway, over time, I feel like, it's just not like, oh my God, what was I thinking? February was a really serious month when we had those people in our country doing things. And I just thought, like, an ice machine, maybe subconsciously I had to take that picture because there were other things around in this area. Um, but I just felt like, what people say, liminal, it's like a buzzword, sort of like performative, liminal. But anyway, I don't know, it feels so cold, this picture. And anyway, so many people have reactions to it. It's crazy. I didn't think it would get that kind of attention. Because my work is really much more careful, portraits, I do other things, but yeah, I don't know what else to say about this, but I thought I have a subtle way of not freaking out. I have a subtle way of screaming, and this is one of them. Very subtle. This piece, I have been working for about, I don't know, number of years on portraits that I feel are kind of emotional, and working with color. I come from a graphic design background. I went to the University of Arts, RISD, a couple of schools, but anyway, go UA, it's gone. But I really enjoyed being studying with the professors that I did, and I learned so much. And I already had a couple of degrees, and I went back for design. It was like probably the best thing I ever did. I did work as a graphic designer, did branding, worked for big corporations and stuff like that, for about 25 years. And I just really always wanted to learn strobe photography and just do photography. I really wanted to do that originally out of college. But I worked for a photographer, but I did not have my own business, and I also worked in advertising. This is when I was living in New York City in my 20s. Anywho, I've worked with this person for a while. She's been in a number of my pictures. And I basically found this shirt on ThreadUp, and I was like, I'm going to just use orange. And I found this chair, because the colors are complementary. And I kept shooting away until, she gave me the expression I wanted. And that's what happened with the picture. So there you go.
Well, as somebody else who is mourning the loss of UArts,
Oh, God.
I spent 7 years there and loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
I really struggled in making a selection because there were so many of your portraits that I thought were just incredible. And
Thank you.
what I actually found about the image of the ice machine was that, and ultimately why I decided not to select another portrait, but to select this instead, is that there was something about the way that you're isolating the
Oh,
the central component of your image and utilizing a palette to really push a narrative forward that I felt was as successful in this as it was in the portraiture. And that was
thank you.
a wonderful realization that yes, there was this moment that we could attribute this to other content in our political country's space, but there's also this idea of like, okay, but this is a photographer who is looking at how to pull something into being, to use a limited palette, to have that palette then reinforce the content of the image, and that strength played so beautifully in this image as it also did in the portraiture. And that
Thank you.
ultimately was enough of a like, all right, well then I'm gonna not have two images that are about this gorgeous umber and gold and orange sort of tones, and make the claim that this sat in the same artistic voice, if only looking at it through the space of color.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah. I really appreciated this image of the ice machine when I saw it because I've photographed these machines a couple of times, and I have this strange fascination with them. They're populated throughout our rural areas, and I don't know
Yes.
why I'm so fascinated with them.
Yeah,
Uh,
I got a crazy story about this. This is a side thing. So I had it on Facebook, and this girl that I went to school with, I grew up in Charleston and went to this girls' school. And she goes, my husband and I own 5 of these in Virginia. Oh my God. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. It's like harking back to my, sort of business design marketing days. And I said, really? That's crazy. And so I kind of looked into like, well, how much do they cost? And then she was like, well, there's the guy that owns that one, the one I took a picture of. I'm going to send him the picture. He never wrote me. I did send it to him, but he never wrote me back. But he owns a ton in Athens. I live in Athens, Georgia. And he owns many in Georgia, actually. So it's basically, like a gumball machine. You put money in and they
Yeah.
earn a certain amount a month or whatever. But, and I looked up how much they cost to buy. There are different configurations and sizes if you want a business like this. But I think the cheapest was like, I don't know, 20, maybe 50,000, 80,000. I think that was what some of them are couple 100,000. But yeah, that's the story. And they need to be maintained. But yeah, anyway, I mean, even the ice, the letter forms, that I that I drew in school and painted, that was a part of my curriculum back in the day. So there are just a lot of really interesting things about the shape, yeah. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks. So this is where we would like normally move into a Q&A. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we had originally slotted tonight for 7 to 8:30. So unless
Right.
someone has a burning desire at this point, has a question for either one of the artists or for Anne, is there anybody that has something they just absolutely need to have answered here?
Hey, David did not to, but did Hussein sign in? Chang?
Oh, he did.
I know we're
Hi
talking
guys.
about
He
time.
well, he was
Oh.
Yeah,
there. He
sorry for
is.
late.
Hey, do you want to have a minute or two to like talk about your work before we wrap up here?
Oh yeah, sure, of course. I love to.
Okay. Let me just re-share real quick. Oops. Okay. Share. Boom. Share. There's so many things on my screen. Okay. And share. Let's get back to your pieces. Great.
So
Okay.
yeah. So that's my work as an ongoing subject. It's called Edge North Atlantic Ocean. So I used the Hasselblad medium format camera. So I went to the Savannah, Tybee Island, and took the ocean landscape. And then I grabbed the seawater with me, come back to develop together. So you can see my films right here. It has when I develop my negative film, I put the seawater into the tank with the develop and then put the chemical together, and then you can see the white, the crystal and the salt from the seawater into the negative film, and then I scan it. Yeah. And that's the sky. So I think water, including like in the air and also in the sea and also earth. So I think that's kind of like a very interesting to me. So I also just took the photo on the sky and then do the same way to develop my film. So, and also I put the ray filter. So you can see the sky is turned to the black to represent like a universal.
They're so beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
and it was one of those ones where going back and forth between so many of them. And actually I'll share this with all of you. I do read statements. Love to know
Thank you.
more about what it is that I'm looking at. And this was one of those ones where reading and understanding more about the work was a place to fall greater in love with what you were making, and so congratulations, they're beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I,
you.
I am the one who is actually going to very quickly have to be like, so I'm due at another event in a few minutes.
Yeah.
I want to just thank all of you for sharing your talent. It was such a pleasure to jury this exhibition and to spend time with your work, and tonight to spend time with each of you. Thank you for being out in the world making photographs.
Great. Thank you so much, Anne. We really, really appreciate it. It's a beautiful show you put together.
Thank you so much.
I'll send you some installation shots.
Awesome. I can't wait to see.
Okay. Great. Well, good night, everyone, and we'll see you soon at the gallery and online.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks.